If you're looking for some tips on how to color with inexpensive markers, stick around till the end of the video for helpful tips. Welcome back, guys, to another Let's Draw. Today's character is going to be Doctor Doom from Marvel's Fantastic Four. So I'm in my sketchbook right now. I'm going to draw 3 different poses. I finally end up landing on the third pose is the one I like, and that's the one I'm going to do for my large illustration. But I also view this time when I'm in my sketchbook as like warming up and loosening up time. It's important that we don't just dive right into that finished illustration because we end up erasing a lot. So use this time to just sort of play around and get loose. Alright, let's talk about tip number 1. Don't settle during the sketching process. You can see here in the video, I'm going to redraw this hand like 3 or 4 times because I simply could not find a gesture that I liked. So this is the time really when you're sketching to make those mistakes, erase, and then go back in. Because once you lay ink down on the paper, you're pretty much married to that. So don't make those commitments right away. Just keep it loose and go on until you find something that you like. Okay guys, tip number 2, make it your own. The reason this is so important is because we can get very locked into a concept that has been around for a long time. So what I did was I went onto Google, I looked up a couple different costumes. Of course I found the classic costume, but I don't know a ton about Doctor Doom, so I was a little bit more free to look at some different concepts and not be really obligated to stick with anything that I was used to in my past. I was able to go around in there and just pull 3 or 4 different concepts together and really ended up, again, making it my own. As far as line work, guys, the equipment I'm using is a 0.3 micron pen for some of my bigger lines initially, and then I use a 0.1 micron pen for a lot of the smaller lines and details, and then later at the end of the illustration I'm going to go in with a 0.5 to get that thicker outline around the entire outside of the drawing. When you're finished and happy with your line work, go in with an eraser and gently erase over top of the lines until you get rid of all the pencil marks. Then you have a nice clean illustration and you're ready for color. Alright, so tip number 3 is roll with it. So I had a game plan that I was going to use my cool gray for most of this illustration, and then I was going to go in with a darker gray, and then I was going to have a little bit of black in certain areas, but you can see that I'm running out of ink in this marker. So I had to change my game plan pretty quickly. So now you're going to see that I'm going to go in with my darker gray and I'm going to start applying it pretty liberally. And then I found that if I layered in, I waited until it dried, and then I went back in with that darker gray, that I could get an even darker shade. The other thing I noticed with inexpensive markers, especially if you don't have a ton of colors that you're working with, if you want a difference in values, all you simply have to do is just go back over your first layer of marker, and then that way you can get some darker color. And you can do this about 2 or 3 times. Anything more and the paper is just going to start to shred underneath. As far as the coloring scheme that I was going for here, obviously I'm trying to make it look like metal, but this is not a really perfect way to do it. If you want better reference, just go to Google Images and look at metal reflecting light, and it actually does some pretty crazy things. But basically I wanted his hand to be the source of light, so everything from left to right on the illustration was going to be dark black, gray, and then a lighter gray, eventually into white. And I leave some white spots open so I can go back in later with a lightning blue to make it look like his armor is reflecting that energy. When I'm getting the color in on his cowl, I basically go in and I just do 1 layer initially, and then anywhere I think it's going to be darker and maybe light isn't hitting it as much, I'll go back in with a second layer of that marker ink, and just darken that stuff up. So I didn't really have an idea of how I was going to make the energy or the lightning happen around his hand, but I played around in my sketchbook and I decided that if I went in with a dark blue and actually drew the outline of like a lightning bolt around his arm, and then I went in with the marker side of a lighter blue and kind of went around that it actually started to look a little bit like lightning. And then from there I just went in with a lighter blue and hit some high points on his armor, and that way it actually looked like it was reflecting some of that light coming off of his hand. And of course, to finish out the illustration, go in with that thicker black line around the entire outside and clean up some of the lines inside of the drawing, and then we are all done with this Dr. Doom. Alright guys, we're at the finish line. This is Dr. Doom all done. I'm actually pretty happy with how this came out. I've never drawn this character before, but I want to thank you so much for sticking around with me. If you have any suggestions or feedback that you want to give me so that you can see it on the next video, I'm totally open to it. Otherwise, do that YouTube thing, subscribe, like, and share, and I'll see you guys next week.